The skies over Emporia, Kansas may look dreary, but you know what, sports fans? You can play disc golf in dreary. Mother Nature may not be smiling upon us, but a knowing wink and a nod means we're playing disc golf today at the 2024 Dynamic Discs Open, coming to you from Champions Landing. As Gandalf said to Harry Potter, may the fourth be with you. So you be Gandalf, I be Harry Potter on this Saturday in early May. Yeah, it's dreary outside. The wind is up, as we expect always here. A little bit of rain. Quit laughing at me. I'm trying to just get us into the mood because I'm so excited that we're actually playing disc golf. We were really concerned about the weather. It moved through in the overnight hours. It looks like, so far at least, today is going to be fine. It's going to be wet. We're playing disc golf, Brian.
Well, it's funny you bring up characters from different worlds because it feels like today it is a different world. We have
Absolutely.
A northwest wind instead of a south-southeast wind, so completely opposite wind, yet a little bit more familiar wind that the players are used to playing in. Talk about that, and yesterday was very uncommon.
It was indeed. It came out of the east, and I'm from this part of the country. That's an unusual wind for here. We heard multiple players talking about that as a story. It may have gotten a little bit old, frankly, by the end of the day, because so many players were coming in talking about how on certain holes they were having to make decisions that they normally haven't had to make. And remember, we're playing at a course that hasn't undergone significant changes over the years, tweaks here and there. But for the most part, a lot of the tee shots are familiar tee shots. A lot of the approach shots, maybe more importantly, are coming from a very specific angle that they always have come from. So players were out there dealing with an unusual wind direction. Today, dealing with the wind that we get in this area when a cold front moves through. So we're talking about a tailing crosswind on hole number one, should help on hole number one. We're talking about something approaching a different type of sort of tailing, I don't know, I guess it's sort of a different crosswind on 16. As you try to hold the green on 16, it's going to be a very different dynamic than it was yesterday. And throughout the course, players will face situations where a green will be easier to reach and another green will be much more difficult to hold.
Well, we were talking about yesterday how the lefties in the MPO division were having a good day out there because of the start and how it's very favorable to the left-to-right shot. Now they're going to have some left-to-right crosswinds on some of these early holes with maybe a little bit of tail helping them out. I think a lot of these players now, especially the righties, are going to get to open up a little bit more, throw some longer shots. They're not going to have to deal with these really tough pushing crosswinds anymore. So I think this is going to be easier for them. But because of that, they're going to still have to score, even though it's going to be wet outside. Let's talk about Haley King. Haley King didn't have her best day of golf, and she's still in the lead with 4 other women. What do you make of the scores yesterday? Was the win trickier than we thought?
I think it was a combination of two things. I do think the wind played a factor because the players all said so. So I'm going to take them, of course, at their word that it did play a factor. But I also think yesterday was just one of those days. It just happened that way. It just so happened that a number of players had good, not great days. And on an open course like this, at least an open feeling course like this, that translates into a bunch of people saying, I left 5 or 6 strokes out there. Well, okay, so we've got 5 of them that all would say they left 5 or 6 strokes out there, and here they are tied at the top at 1 under par with another host of players at even par right on their heels.
Well, Haley, Missy, and Emily Weatherman all missed 6 Circle 1 putts yesterday. You take a look at the Circle 1 in regulation stats, there's your lead card. They are showing you how to score on this course. You don't need to go 10 under par, especially when the wind picks up to 20, 25 miles an hour like it is today. We're looking behind us, Grant, over the swimming pool here at Champions Landing. The trees are blowing harder than they were yesterday. So I think this is actually a day where the players can still afford to do that, but they have to throw the disc well. Haley was struggling a little bit with the backhand touch getting up to the basket. I feel like she left herself 30 feet short way too often and put herself on a bad side of the green. The forehand looked fantastic. Even when she was trying to throw something touchier, she would throw it and kind of feel like she didn't throw it great,
right.
Still put it next to the basket compared to the backhand. So if Haley just leans into her strengths, she was the leader strokes gained tee to green yesterday. I think she should still have no problem. And then if the putter gets hot, Missy's going to have to work really, really hard. We talked to Haley King yesterday after her round. Let's take a listen to what she had to say.
I actually feel extremely comfortable throwing the disc out here. It's coming to putting where my wrist is really tight. I wasn't able to loosen it up, so it was just like driving was fine, putting was where it lacked. Yeah, I'm going to be talking to my coach, Dr. Wilcox, a lot. I already texted him throughout the round. He's telling me ideas what to do. So I'm just going to listen to his advice and wake up early, see if I can, I don't know, massage it out a little bit more for the next day and see if it works. I mean, I'm probably just going to throw a towel down and throw the same. I don't know, I'm just going to keep my body slow so there's not too much momentum that'll make me slip, but I'm going to keep throwing the same disc, have the same game plan.
So something else to note there with Haley King, willing to divulge that she's having a little bit of a wrist issue, not something that's keeping her off the course, but something that is nagging, something that's in her mind, something that she's already doing something about, which is a good thing. We'll have to keep an eye on that today, where players might have to rely a little bit more on finesse. They might not be able to get as much lower body power into their shots because of the wet conditions. So we'll have to keep an eye on that and see how things go.
Well, I think that explains everything with the putt and the approaches on the backhand side. The closer you get to the basket, the more all of it is in your hand.
Yeah.
You're not moving all of your levers to throw 100 feet. You're popping your wrist manually to make that happen. And maybe that's why she was having trouble dialing in the power, throwing the backhand full power with the driver. You're using your torso, your shoulders, your arm, your forearm, your wrist. Much easier to still throw with power, which she clearly was.
Missy Gannon also there in the top five, or I should say the top one, with four other players, making it a five. So Missy Gannon, we caught up with her after her round today, and she also talking about how the round was very good in some respects, and in other respects, a lot of stumbles that she wants to clean up here on day number 2.
Yeah, it was weird. Personally, at Champions Cup, I lost a go-to disc of mine, which I probably would have thrown on a lot of the holes out here. So unfortunately, I ended up going with one that I did field work with, and I thought it was good, but it just not quite as stable as I thought. So a couple of my errors were on not only OB, but also on the wrong side of OB. I was finding myself on like the short sides instead of playing for the OB on the left side or whatever to gain me more distance. So yeah, I'm just trying to work through some disc changes a little bit, and yeah, I'll go back and do field work after this and try to find something else to put in for tomorrow. So I'm going to go, while the wind is still up, I'm going to go and do some field work there and just test a bunch of things, but also know that if I'm going to err, I need to err on the correct side to gain the distance. But yeah, like I said, field work's going to be important. I've done a lot of it, but I'm going to have to go do more and see what tomorrow brings.
Brian, I don't know about you. In my hometown, I've got a couple of courses I play in. One of those courses, I feel like I only use 3 or 4 discs throughout the course. It's just the way the course sets up for me. It's not uncommon for pros to have courses like that too. And for Missy, clearly this is a course where she expects to lean on that one favorite disc on a lot of different shots around the course, and she lost that favorite disc. It's infecting her.
Yeah, she's one that's super dialed in with her equipment. She throws these beautiful little mini flexes on a really tight line, and that's kind of her bread and butter, the iconic Missy Gannon shot. But you need a very specific stability of disc to do that. And when you lose that disc that you've been dialing in over and over and over again, it's not just the archer. The arrow matters a lot, especially playing at the highest levels when you're required to be as precise as Missy Gannon is. And when you pack a disc that you think is going to do one thing and it doesn't do the thing you expect it to do, or in a specific moment where you're supposed to trust it to stay stable and you flip it, that's a moment you can't forget. It's hard to unlearn that and not think about that the next time you throw that disc. So Missy dialing in her equipment, going back to the field, means that she's taking this very seriously. You wonder how many players are actually going out after the round yesterday and putting in the work that Missy Gannon did. Again, 6 circle 1 putts. If she can just find herself on the right side, like she said, give herself 6 tailwind putts, those are going to go in the basket.
Let's talk about the other 2 players that will be joining Missy and Haley on today's final card out the gate. Let's go with Emily Weatherman for starters. Emily Weatherman is a player that a lot of our viewers may not be super familiar with. I want to be clear, yesterday we talked about Hannah Leatherman, a former champion of an event here on this property. So we're talking about 2 different people. I know I caught myself typing the wrong thing last night as I wrote a story, but Emily Weatherman's got game, and she's going to get a chance to show it off in front of the cameras. She hasn't played in front of cameras very often.
She hasn't, but when I interviewed her at Texas State on her 18th birthday, she was very confident. She relishes these moments. She wants to play under pressure. And the first thing that I noticed when I watched her play, look at the putting stroke. Lots of spin, not this crazy wristy spin putt. It's got a very comfortable stance. She's more push spin than anything. And she's got both the forehand and the backhand already. She hit 21 of 22 fairways yesterday. And it's not like she's going to throw 500 feet, but she's got a nice controlled backhand shot. And I think she's going to have to work really hard because of the lack of speed to play some of these tough winds with the northwest wind. Now, obviously on the front nine, she's going to have to do bulk of her scoring. On the back, you really have to manage because 8 and 9, especially playing in these winds now, it's going to play very difficult.
Hannah Wynn, also on the lead card today, another player that maybe we're a little bit more familiar with than Emily, but a player that hasn't played on featured cards very frequently during the course of both this year and her career. Talk to us about Hannah and her game for those that may not be as familiar.
Well, Hannah, very similar to Emily Weatherman, but just a little bit more experience on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. She's got a solid backhand. She's got a solid forehand. She's not throwing huge shots on either side, but she's very controlled. She has a nice putt. Interesting, though, about this season is she has performed the absolute best at the major championships, at U.S. Women's and at Champions Cup, 13th and 15th respectively, but then the rest of the Disc Golf Pro Tour has been a bit of a struggle for her. So she's found those moments where she's hitting her potential, where she's playing the way she's supposed to play, and then other times it feels like she's really not delivering what we're expecting her to deliver after last year starting to really pop off and put together some good performances. But she's cleaned up a lot of things that she'd struggled with this year. She is 6 for 8 circle one putting. That's exactly what you need to do out here. You have to get some of those shorter putts in the basket. You can't take any of these things for granted out here. And the back nine was kind of a struggle. We saw that she grabbed 4 birdies. She can manage the easy fixes on the bogeys, like hole 1, for example. I think she can go deeper under par, and especially on a day like this, if you go 2 or 3 under par, you're going to take even more strokes in the field.
We saw a lot of rounds yesterday sort of derail right in that middle portion. Holes 8 and 9 are trouble. They're trouble in both fields, the MPO and the FPO, but in particular, a lot of rounds that were 2, 3 under par, when they stepped to that tee at 8, yeah, you're 2, 3 under par. When they walked off of the green at 9, many of them were even or even over par at that point. Those holes are brutal. Let's talk about those, starting with hole number 8.
Well, let's dive into it. Let's actually fly that hole. Let's walk through the treacherous shot here. You usually have some sort of crosswind just where this is oriented on the course, whether it's a hard right to left, super hard to stick the disc in bounds, or a hard left to right, which prevents you from getting to swing that hyzer super wide. You have the OB path on the right side. It slopes down to the OB on the left side. So for a righty, you have to throw a really touchy backhand that probably comes in on hyzer, but doesn't get the downhill skip into the out of bounds. A lot of players, we saw Missy Gannon do it yesterday with an overstable mid-range, just throw it short. Just put the first shot in play. It's a par 5, 886. You can dissect that in 250-foot shots, no problem. All you have to do is stick that first one in bounds, and then you have a choice. Do I want to get over this ridge with distance and risk cut rolling out of bounds on the left side, or do I try to throw the forehand over the ridge and get a little bit less distance? Once you get the first 2 shots in play, you have a lot to work with. You can go low ceiling backhand that gets a flare up to circle 1's edge, or you throw that aggressive turnover or the forehand like we saw with Owen Scoggins on that left side. It is birdieable. It's been done. We've seen players do it. We saw Owen Scoggins get it yesterday, but this hole is just tearing people up, and really it has for both divisions for years now.
Well, and on this hole, when you go out of bounds, you're not in a great spot to throw your next shot, even though the footing might be okay. Similar here at hole number 9. I camped out at hole number 9 for a while yesterday, and there are some things about this hole that sort of surprise you in a way and sneak up on you. One is you figure all I've got to do is hit the gap. If I hit the gap, the disc can't go anywhere but in bounds. And that's almost true. You can flare up off to that left side and get over that cart path and find yourself out of bounds. The problem is, in order to make this second shot, you need to push the one out of bounds line you can actually see off the tee. And that's a daring thing to do. This shot right here with the OB, where those 2 red flags are, that juts in and cuts off your wide sort of shot. It'll capture anything that's 2 nose up and flares out. You've got to try to get up here to even see the basket. And what I saw yesterday, Brian, was a lot of players that were tempted by throwing the turnover or even the forehand for their second shot to get around that corner and to clip over the corner of that OB. What I was noticing, though, is if you played short of that OB, yes, you might have given up a few feet for that third shot into the pin, but it wasn't a markedly harder shot. So players were being tempted to take on a risk that wasn't giving them very much of a reward. They still had a third shot into a green and they still needed to hit that putt in the woods. So I'm going to be curious to see how the change in wind direction impacts the way players choose to either try to cut that corner, in many cases unnecessarily, or to just play short of the OB, which is hard to do. You're probably throwing a putter for your second shot, and then throw a longer but more predictable third shot into the green. I'm going to be curious to see how players attack that hole differently than they did on day number one. Also knowing this, that second shot will be much more into a headwind today. So it's going to impact whether those discs turn over, whether they nose up and stall out and then land in the out of bounds. It's going to be very interesting to see how strategies change.
Well, this is actually one of my dream 18 holes, and it's on a traditional golf course, which is not common. It's one of my favorite holes on tour because of the single fact that I love when there is a tee pad out of bounds. There is forced aggression. There's no bailout zone. You have to get it in bounds. You have to hit the gap with something deliberate, and you're not going to be able to err on the side of either side of the fairway, really. So one of my favorite holes, and I think hands down my favorite hole on this course.
Hole 8 and 9 both played among the top 5 hardest holes on day number one. I expect them to do so on day number 2, but I'm just very curious about the adjustments that are going to be made. It's going to be a lot of fun. Later on, we'll talk about the MPO field, give you a little preview of what's to come later on this afternoon. But first, a word from our friends at UPlay.
Sweet. All right, we got 4
UPlay's last Community Connect event on the Disc Golf Pro Tour was at Music City Open. Cane Ridge High School was the recipient of our Community Connect grant, and our pro coaches, led by Ella Hansen, James Conrad, Holland Hanley, and Joey Tamale on the media capture, taught 109 students on the day to a school that has 1,900 students that will start playing disc golf during their PE programs. We are extremely thankful to our continued support from the Disc Golf Pro Tour, Disc Mania, providing the baskets, Infinite Discs for the starter packs, Trash Panda for the minis, and UDisc for the discs that we're able to give away to children for them to take home and continue playing disc golf. Thank you, everyone. Disc golf is certainly making big things happen.
In a backyard kingdom, not so different from your own. Prince of Southern royalty was born of a plastic stone.
I'm David Wiggins, and in 2016, I set the disc golf world distance record with a throw of 1,108 feet. Whether I'm out in the field measuring a max distance throw, or on the course checking the elevation change for an upshot, I rely on the Eagle Secret 360 to give me accurate distances. It's the only rangefinder on the market that measures in feet, yards, and meters. It's USB-C rechargeable and features a lithium-ion battery. Visit EagleSecret360.com to get yours today.